Good evening, everybody. I'm in Dallas, America.
Just 2 minutes, sir. Yeah.
Yeah, I want to start at time, on time, obviously.
Yeah, just a minute.
10 minutes more.
No, just 2 minutes.
Okay. Yeah, I'd like to start on time, always, everything.
Yeah. No, sir. Yes, sir, we can. Sir, you can unmute yourself. Participants, please mute yourself. Participants, please mute yourself. Vidya Nayak ji, please mute yourself. Pankaj sir, we can start now.
Okay, all right.
So, can I introduce? Yeah, done.
Oh, yes.
Yes. In fact, good morning to you, Pankaj sir, and good evening to the delegates from India. We are overwhelmed and very much happy that we are here to listen to Dr. Pankaj Jain, Associate Professor, Department of Philosophy and Religion, Co-Chair, Indian Initiative Group, Co-Editor for Encyclopedia of Hinduism, University of North Texas. Sir will be talking to us today on Indian culture and ecology. Dr. Pankaj Jain is co-chair of Indian Initiatives Group and associate professor in the Department of Philosophy and the Religion at the University of North Texas. He has compiled the history of Jains and Hindus in America for his latest monograph, Dharma in America, a short history of Hindu-Jain diaspora. Currently, he is translating Jain Darshan, a monumental text on the philosophy of Jainism, and is working on his fourth monograph, Makers of Modern Jainism. He is co-editing the Encyclopedia of Hinduism, as well as a volume on Indian and Western philosophical concepts in religion. He is also the author of award-winning Dharma and Ecology of Hindu Committees, Sustenance and Sustainability. His articles have appeared in several academic journals and on the Huffington Post, Washington Post's Forum on Faith, Times of India Speaking Tree, and Pathos. Dr. Jain is widely quoted in various American and Indian media outlets, and Morgan Freeman interviewed him for the section on Jainism in the TV series, The Story of God. He tweets at Professor Pankaj Jain. I request the participant to kindly mute themselves. Dr. S. Jagada, please. Yes, with this brief notes, I would now request our Professor Pankaj Jain to enlighten us with India and its Indian culture and ecology. Dr. S. Jagada ji, Dr. S. Jagada ji, please mute yourself.
Okay, I think it's
better
now. We can, as a host, Mr. Das, you should be able to mute everybody. But
yeah, I have done that. Yes, sir.
Except me, yeah. Keep me on mute.
Yeah.
All right.
Yes.
All right. Thank you, Mr. Das, for inviting me. I always enjoy sharing whatever little that I've discovered in my, ongoing exploration of India. Ever since I left India many years ago and living in America, but I feel I became more Indian as I've lived in America. So it's an endless discovery of the great civilization that is India. We all are very proud to be Indians, wherever we might live. But I feel, at least I felt that I know very little about India. I might be born in India. That doesn't mean that I know about my heritage. Those were the questions that started my journey of discovery of India in a way. And so I left my IT career and became, got my master's and PhD in Indian culture in America. And now I'm a professor in the Dallas area, Texas, and love to share from my first book. This is part of this research that I'm going to present is based on my dissertation, PhD dissertation research that I did actually 2008. I finished my PhD, but it's still this is the topic that I get most invitations for, and so I always love to share more based on that research. After that, I did publish 2 more books, but this is from the first book. This is based on this book, which is called as Dharma and Ecology of Hindu Communities, Sustenance and Sustainability. This is based on the research that I did, fieldwork that I conducted in Rajasthan, Gujarat, Maharashtra, with Bishnoi community in Rajasthan, Swadhyay Parivar in Maharashtra and Gujarat for the most part, and the Bhil community on the borders of Rajasthan and Gujarat. Today I'll share only from the 2 communities of Bishnois and Swadhyais. But the overall argument that I have tried to make in the book and overall in my whole career is relevant based on all these 3 communities. And I think the argument goes beyond these 2 communities. It's largely based on the Indian cultural perspective. Right, so since the whole conference is based on environmentalism, and environmentalism has obviously many theories, Western theories, and now probably Eastern Asian theories as well. And so this is based on my own, somebody is writing on the screen now. Please, I'm not doing it, but somebody is.
Dear participants, if you do like this, we know who is doing. Please, I request you. Yeah.
Okay, thank you. Maybe some kids are also interested. The topic is relevant to kids as well. All right, so yes, so the topic is cultures of sustainability of culture. So in a way, what I'm saying is that if cultures that have sustained themselves for millennia, right, all the way from Indus Valley civilization to Mauryan Empire, Gupta Empire, Chola Empire, and so many other empires that we had in South India, and Vijayanagar Empire, and then the British Raj, and now the 21st century, something that is there in Indian culture, Indian civilization that has sustained itself for millennia, and China also, and other cultures as well. The cultures of sustainability have sustained themselves. Sorry. So what are those elements that have sustained Indian culture for so long? The other subtitle of the presentation is Eco-Dharma. So Dharma, which is very ecologically conscious, Dharmic ecology of Bishnois and Swadhyais. So before we get into more details on these 2 communities and ecology, we also must remind ourselves that so far for last 2 centuries, especially after the British Raj, during the British Raj and afterwards in Euro-American academia, Western scholars have looked at Eastern cultures or other Asian cultures or even African cultures from Western perspectives, right? So Max Weber will say, grandfather of sociology, the founder of sociology in a way, that West is agentic, where East is fatalist, or East, everybody is just stuck to their karma, stuck to their fate or destiny, and no way out of it. They cannot come out of that mindset. That was very stereotypical perspective on the East. And Talcott Patterson said that in the West, you have to achieve something to get some status in the society. But in the East, yeah, everybody is stuck to their birth, their jati, their family, and that determines your status. Even if you achieve something in your life, you cannot change your status. Very stereotypical perspective and ignoring hundreds of examples where people did change their status based on their accomplishments, even in the Eastern countries, in India and elsewhere. John Stuart Mill used to say that West is mature. India or other Eastern cultures are like childlike, very immature and innocent kind of, and they can be appreciated for their childish innocence, but cannot be taken as serious, matured culture. That was John Stuart Mill. So these are the kind of imperialism of categories that Susan Rudolph, an American scholar, had mentioned in her presidential address about 15 years ago. That these are the kind of new imperialistic ideas, neo-imperialism or neo-colonialism, that the West is still imposing the cultures of Asia. So even in ecological studies, environmental studies, these kind of tendencies are still persistent, right? So, for example, this scholar, Emma Tomalin, in about 10 years ago, when she published her book, she openly said that Indians cannot be environmentalists because Indians are still suffering from hunger and unemployment and poverty and all that. Environmentalism is a privilege of the rich people of the West. Indians cannot even try to think about this. They have to first feed their stomachs. So that's kind of argument that she made. So full environmentalism can be done only by the full stomach people, not by empty belly people. People in India still have empty belly, so they cannot they cannot think of environmentalism, and Indian cities are full of garbage and all kinds of pollution and all that. Based on that, she jumped to the conclusion that it is not possible by the Indians. Then in 2018, just a couple of years back, World Economic Forum came up with this ranking where they put India at the 177th rank when it comes to environmental performance. And highest they put, I don't have here, but Euro-American countries in North America and Europe were given high ranks for their environmentalism, while India was at 177th rank. So these are some of the tendencies that I think are still coming in from the West. So to sort of judge other cultures from their own perspective, their own biases, their own stereotypes. Now, but thankfully there are now counter perspectives also in America, at least. For example, this National Geographic magazine, one of the prominent magazines read across the world, they measured what is called as green deck, what they called as green decks, which means green index of major countries. And they measured the carbon footprint of each major country, several major countries, Russia. So you can see in this map, they measured the carbon footprint, overall carbon footprint of United States, Canada, Mexico, Russia, England, France, Germany, Australia, and Brazil, and so on, China and India, of course. And they put India as the greenest country in the world. So now we have two contrasting perspectives. One says that India is at the 177th rank, and Indians cannot be environmentalist. And Greendex, National Geographic says India is the greenest. So which perspective do I pick up? Can we accept more openly, or which has the more which perspective should we analyze more deeply? So looking at this word empty belly environmentalism, this actually is what it means. What it is based on is that the overall carbon footprint of Indians is actually very low. Why? Because if you look at this graph here, one of the major reasons for carbon footprint is meat consumption and meat production, meat transportation from North America to South America, mostly from South America to North America, from Texas to different parts of the United States. And that production of meat, transportation of meat, consumption of meat, that is one of the biggest reasons for carbon footprint in the United States. So when they measured the carbon footprint based on meat consumption, just meat consumption itself, United States is the highest. Then Brazil, then Canada, United Kingdom, England, China, Kenya, and India. So meat consumption is lower in India, even lower than Kenya, because meat consumption was never encouraged by our cultural traditions or historically. Because meat consumption is so low, carbon footprint is also very, very low in India, even today in 21st century, when some people are shifting more towards meat consumption. But as late as 2013, you see on this graph that India performs really well when it comes to meat consumption within the country. Although we know that a lot of meat is exported out of India for other countries' consumption, that's for economic reasons by farmers or so on. But consumption within India is still very less as late as 2013. So this is one of the reasons that carbon footprint of India is also one of the lowest compared to Brazil or China or United States or Canada or other countries. Then we look at the other word, minimalism. So passenger car density, you look at this passenger car density now, the second graph, we see Italy has 600 cars per 1,000 people. So 1,000 people, 600 cars. Germany, 500, France, Spain, US, Japan, and India still almost looks like 5-10 cars per 1,000 people, right? And as late as 2009, so very recent, just 11 years ago, maybe now more, of course, but still because the car consumption is so less in India for different reasons. But one of the reasons is that, based on the very choked traffic that we have, we must depend, especially in a city like Mumbai, people must depend on their public transport, right? Corporate buses, local trains and whatnot. So based on that, the carbon footprint is again lower because less car. And so that means less carbon footprint based on these two major reasons that gives a lot of huge carbon footprint for a country such as United States, a lot of meat consumption, a lot of cars. Cars means you're emitting more CO2, you're consuming more resources, more minerals and whatnot. And again, you'll produce those cars, the carbon footprint, transport those cars from different industries to consumers, more carbon footprint. And then when you drive these cars, you're emitting more CO2 gases, greenhouse gas emissions. So because of these two major reasons, Indian carbon footprint is much lower than many other countries and major economies in the world. This is all based, by the way, by scholars Ramachandra Guha and Joan Martinez Elias. So I'm showing you different perspectives on Indian environmental performance, what is called as green decks. So green decks, when National Geographic measured, they looked at these criteria: meat consumption, transportation. That's how they figured out that India is the greenest country even today, even though we do know that there's a lot of pollution in Indian cities, but overall carbon footprint is much lower in India compared to other countries. All right, now I'm diving into my own research. So far, I was just I was sharing with you what others have said and how they have measured the environmental performance of India. Now, looking at, I guess, kind of developing this idea of vegetarianism and how that translates into ecology, I want to share now these two communities of the Bishnois and the Swadhyais. Both of these are also vegetarian communities, by the way. They are lacto-vegetarians. They do consume dairy products and other milk products, by the way. So based on these two communities' research, what I and other scholars have come up with is a new theory called dharmic ecology. This is a theory of ecology, theory of environmentalism, which is based on the dharmic traditions of India. Right? So dharmic tradition, dharma, what is dharma then? Now I'll get into more into how do we define dharma and how it connects with ecology. So there are some pictures from how Bishnoi people live in the rural parts of desert regions or region of Rajasthan, and I'll get into more of that. So these are the two communities. Bishnoi started in 1490s and Swadhyay started in 1940s. In Maharashtra and Gujarat, Swadhyay started. Bishnoi people started from Rajasthan. They're also called as 29ers because they live by their 29 rules. Their founder was Guru Jambheshwar, who lived from 1451 to 1536. And Swadhyay founder, Pandurang Shastri Athavale, lived from 1920 to 2003. And I'll get into more details now. So Bishnoi people now, this is a map a few years ago, but still holds true. Mostly they are living in different parts of Rajasthan, Haryana, as you can see, Punjab, Madhya Pradesh, Odisha also a little bit. And that's how, so almost 500,000, 5 lakh or 500,000 people, and probably now maybe a bit more because this is a little older map. So I'm just showing you where Bishnoi people are located. And so, as is very common in Rajasthan region where I come from, actually I was also born in Rajasthan many years ago, and so it's very common for Rajasthan to see a lot of droughts and famines. So around 1485, there was a long drought, many years, not a single drop of water. People were thirsty, hungry, dying, animals were dying, and people were looking for water, obviously, everywhere. And they started killing their animals for food. And in that scenario, Guru Jambheshwar, who was in his late 20s, probably very young person living in that part of Rajasthan, and he was worried about, he was very concerned about looking at the people and animals in that scenario. So he sits on a desert, on a sand dune, and he goes into his meditation, and he has some kind of an enlightenment mystical experience in which he concludes that if we want to live in such an environment, such a hostile environment in the desert, we have to live in harmony with nature. We have to take care of our animals. We have to take care of our plants and water resources and whatnot. That can only be our solution to living in a hostile climate, such as the desert of Rajasthan, of that part of that time of India, 1485 time frame, 500 years from now. So he comes out of this meditation experience and codifies his teachings in 29 rules. In 29 rules, and that becomes 29. So 20 Bish, 9 Noi, 29 Bish Noi. It becomes the name of that community. And whoever accepts those 29 rules becomes a Bishnoi. So he starts making new disciples, his own family members, and just people living around him. They all start becoming Bishnois. And in those 29 rules, he uses the word dharam in that archaic version of Rajasthani. Uses the word dharam, and dharam is that which is about protecting the environment. Dharam is that which is about personal hygiene. So live a clean life, take shower every morning, for example. And even though that was a desert and famine and drought and whatnot, but he says you should maintain a very clean lifestyle, physical cleanliness, spiritual cleanliness, mental cleanliness, and so on. Spirituality, he highlighted, chant the name of Vishnu, and personal and social morality, do not lie, do not kill, and practice non-violence and whatnot, which are standard teachings of many religions, commandments, kind of things. So these are the 29 rules that he came up with, and 120 statements, or what are called as sabadas. So 120 sabadas, or sabad or shabdas, or statements, and 29 rules is what captures all his teachings, and that became the foundation principle. That became the foundation principles of the Bishnoi community. So what is Bishnoi Dharam? Bishnoi Dharam is, if you remember that the divinity residing in your heart also resides in animals, you will surely achieve heaven, Swarg Milega. You will not be able to justify the violence when questioned by your own deities. When your own gods and goddesses question you, that if you are a spiritual person, how can you kill other animals? Because other animals have the same divinity as you have. So that became the foundation principle of the Bishnoi philosophy or Bishnoi culture. Then, so teaching and preaching is one thing, and doing is other thing. So he taught those things, but he also did these things where he himself created these water harvesting sites. Now it is very common to hear these words, rainwater harvesting and whatnot. But probably he was one of the earliest religious gurus, or probably the earliest religious spiritual guru, who constructed water harvesting sites in that desert region of Rajasthan. He planted new trees, hundreds and thousands of trees he planted across Rajasthan. There are stories that sometimes just by miracle, by sheer miracle, he can plant hundreds of trees. So that goes on also in these mythical framework or hagiographical stories that are written about his life. Then he also constructed animal and bird sanctuaries. So by his teachings and by his action, by his life, he inspired hundreds and thousands of Bishnois to follow these principles, to practice these ideas in their life also. And Bishnoi people have done that over centuries. For example, in 1730 CE, Amrita Devi was the first environmental martyr who sacrificed her life, and with her more than 363 men, women, and children, all Bishnois. They were killed by the soldiers of Jodhpur Empire living, in their nearby village. So near Jodhpur, there is a village called Kejarli village, and where these soldiers go and start cutting green trees. And Amrita Devi rushes to the spot, hugs the tree, Kejarli tree, and saves that tree. And with Amrita Devi, hundreds of more Bishnoi people, men, women, and children, they all hug their trees, they all get killed. So this is probably the first environmental sacrifice that anybody conducted in any part of the world. This hugging the tree, which is in Hindi is called as Chipko, became the inspiration for Chipko movement in Uttarakhand, in Himalayas, many years ago, in 1970, early 1970s. As many scholars speculate. We don't have any actual evidence of this connection between Bishnois and Chipko movement, but it seems very similar. The very idea of Chipko probably was probably somebody took as an example, inspiration from the Bishnoi people. So that was in 1730. Amrita Devi, the first environmental sacrifice that she conducted. Then that story of Amrita Devi is now a story for a popular book in American children's literature. So this is the same title, The People Who Hug the Trees, written by Deborah Lee Rose and based on the story of Amrita Devi. So Amrita Devi, Bishnoi culture is now has this global appeal in a way, and many people take inspiration from the Bishnoi people on their environmentalism. And I think late or early 1980s, Indian government established a new award to honor the memory of Amrita Devi. It's called as the Amrita Devi Award. So it's in honor of a Bishnoi person, and it is given mostly to Bishnoi people because they are at the forefront of stopping the poachers, stopping the hunters, and even catching Salman Khan, rushing to as soon as, so Salman Khan's story we all know probably, that Salman Khan and Saif Ali Khan, Tabbu and Neelam, they were shooting for the film Hum Saath Saath Hain in Jodhpur, and for his leisure activity, Salman and they all go to a Bishnoi village and start hunting a black buck. So Salman, as soon as he shoots a black buck, Bishnoi people rush to the spot, catch Salman Khan, and he's behind the bars, and he's still fighting that court case. I think now almost 40 years, almost 40 years, 30 years over now. So that kind of this action of catching Salman Khan is not an isolated incident. Bishnoi history is full of many dozens of such examples where they rush to the spot, catch the poacher or a hunter, and make sure that their trees, their birds, their animals are all protected and defended from these hunters and poachers. Most famous, of course, I already shared this example of Amrita Devi, but there are many such examples. This here, a father is very proudly telling a documentary filmmaker that he lost his son because his son was again killed by another hunter who was trying to hurt some animal in the Bishnoi villages, in his village, and his son dies. And this is an award-winning picture of a Bishnoi woman who is nurturing, loving her own child and a deer cub with same love and affection. So that kind of a affection, harmony is what has highlighted, what has defined Bishnoi culture for centuries. Now switch gears and let's switch to the more modern movement. As I said, it started, Swadhyay movement, Swadhyay Parivar started from Mumbai area and then spread across Gujarat initially and then Maharashtra and Madhya Pradesh and all over India and now all over the world, even in Dallas where I am currently. So Swadhyay started in 1942 when Pandurang Shastri Athavale started giving these pravachans, discourses on Vedas, Upanishads, and the Bhagavad Gita and other Vedic texts. Unlike Guru Jambeshwar, who was speaking in Rajasthani language, and Guru Jambeshwar, Bishnoi founder, probably never studied Sanskrit texts so thoroughly. But Pandurang Shastri Athavale Dadaji actually was a Sanskrit scholar. He was given this title of Shastri because he was an expert on Vedic texts. So he spoke in a very literary way, and he cited several Sanskrit texts all over the place in almost all his discourses and pravachans. So extremely highly learned person. So what I'm saying is that even though somebody may not be a Sanskrit scholar like Guru Jambeshwar or Bishnoi, or a Sanskrit scholar like Dadaji, can both take inspiration from the same Hindu tradition, same Vedic tradition of based on Vishnu and Krishna, and they both take inspiration from the similar ideas, similar philosophy of seeing divinity in everybody, in everything, and inspiring their followers to take care of their environment very carefully. So Dadaji Pandurang Shastri Athavale also highlighted the same Vedantic idea of seeing divinity in your own heart and in the hearts of every other human being and other animals and trees and so on. And based on that idea, he gave this mantra or gave this slogan as devotion as social force. Bhakti ek samajik shakti hai. So based on that idea of devotion, devotional activism was formed. So people became spiritual activists across the world, across Gujarat, Maharashtra, and across India, and eventually across the world. So one of his teachings by Dadaji was that the relationship should be based on the devotion, based on the spiritual unity of seeing divinity in everything, not just based on what I get, what profit I get from other person, or what pleasure I get from other person, what principle I see in other people. Not based on these 3 P's, not based on profit, pleasure, or principle, but this relationship should be based on spiritual devotion, seeing divinity in everything, in every being. The same idea that we should revere everybody, everything, and every being in the universe, because same divinity resides in nature, in other humans, and other animals, and whatnot, and everything else. So based on this devotional activism, other scholars, other observers, so this word silent singing revolution was given by actually an Iranian diplomat, ambassador of Iran, who was very interested to know about Swadhyay. So he comes to India, goes to Swadhyay villages, and forms and gives this title to Swadhyay, silent singing revolution. So that time, even Indians didn't know about Swadhyay movement, but this Iranian diplomat was so impressed that he gave this word silent singing revolution to Swadhyay Parivar. So as devotional activism, as I was referring to, this started with devotional visits. So the people who were listening to Dadaji started going to Gujarat, remote villages of Gujarat and Maharashtra, and started forming these spiritual relationships with people living in these remote villages. And they came up with these new ideas of socio-spiritual shrines, where the priest is not designated based on his caste or on his caste, but people from all classes and castes in villages can take turns and become priest of the temple in the village. So by that, entire village started living with more harmony and as a family. They started projects and experiments of prayogs, as they call it, prayogs to worship the oceans, because oceans are also divine. Worship the cow, of course, cows are already considered divine in Hindu tradition. To form new Vriksh mandirs or tree temples. So construct new gardens and farms where you grow trees of fruits and other food, grains, and so on. But the money that you earn from by selling those fruits should be considered like Mahalakshmi, because the land does not belong to one farmer, but to the entire village. The entire village does their farming on these common land as devotion to God, and that whatever products produced that they sell is treated like Mahalakshmi, and that is gifted to needy people in the village, not as a donation, but as prasad to the needy people in a very subtle way, in a very respectful manner. And then water harvesting was also done by Swadhyay people. So when I asked in my research, are you doing these things for environmental reasons? You're planting new trees, you're cleaning up the coastal areas of Gujarat and Maharashtra. Are you environmentalists? They said, no, we are not environmentalists. We are just expressing our devotion to Almighty. We are expressing devotion to Bhagwan. Whatever the good effects on the environment are simply byproducts. That's not our main purpose. Our purpose is just to express our gratitude towards Bhagwan. And that's the picture of the current Swadhyay leader, who is called as DDG by Swadhyay. Water harvesting was also done. More than 100,000 wells were recharged across Gujarat, Maharashtra for the most part. Water was also harvested in ponds. And the slogan given was, if you quench the thirst of Mother Earth will quench yours. अगर आप धरती माता की प्यास बुझाएंगे इस तरह से by doing rainwater harvesting, तभी आपकी प्यास बुझेगी, तभी आपको भी पानी मिलेगा. So that kind of a slogan worked very well across Gujarat and Maharashtra. Then arboreal dharma, where Dadaji inspired his followers, his listeners, to take note of the divinity residing in trees, how water goes against gravitation and reaches uppermost parts of plants and trees. That shows that divinity is in the trees also, just to make them understand that divinity is not just in temples, not just in mosques, not just in churches, not just in heaven, but divinity is there even in the trees. So we should worship trees, we should take care of the trees, we should revere trees, and not and do our farming and use that produce as our Mahalakshmi with all the respect and reverence for the trees. So these were different titles were given. Vanprasthas, those who were retired, started working their full-time volunteers in those gardens and farms. Part-time pujaris, those who are still working, will go on the weekends and still take care of those trees and plants and gardens and farms and produce as prasad, as I already mentioned. So one who goes to farm just for work is farmer, but one who goes to enjoy and respect greenery goes with reverence and gratitude towards God. This reverential perspective inspires to make the entire world green. So that kind of idea that I captured from one of my interviews during my research. This is a picture from New Jersey in America, where Swadhyay people are doing similar things even in America. So they buy these small plants, plant them inside their homes, and then eventually in their backyard. So an entire family comes together, sings these Vedic mantras with the plant. So American kids, Hindu kids growing in America should also have this idea, this same reverence towards nature, towards the other beings and other plants and the entire universe, basically. So how do we develop this reverential attitude even in American kids? By doing these kind of things, that plants are also part of our family members, right? So they're also part of our family. So these kind of mantras are chanted for months together as part of the activities with the plant as a family member. These are the different activities Swadhyay people did, and they got all kinds of awards over decades. Magsaysay Award, Templeton Prize, which is world's largest award. Then Padma Vibhushan was given to Dadaji in 1999, and his daughter now is carrying on the work after he passed away in 2003. The overall argument that I'm making based on Bishnois and Swadhyay is that dharma is a category which means not just religion, but also physical property, physical characteristic. Dharma also means duty or kartavya. Dharma is used to connect with supernatural aspects, spiritual aspects, natural aspects or environmental aspects, and human condition or ethical aspects. So dharma is that which intersects with religion and physical characteristics and human duties. So dharma is the category that works pretty well with these two communities and larger Indian culture. So dharma of trees can inspire dharma of humans to become better human beings. And as humans become better, less greedy and less selfish, dharma of the environment will automatically come as a byproduct, as we see in these two communities of Bishnois and Swadhyais. So moral and ecological and dharmic, they all become synonymous, as other scholars in America have also argued, looking at other communities in India. Anne Gould, for example, a famous anthropologist in Syracuse University in New York, she conducted her research for decades in a small village in Ajmer in Rajasthan also. And she found that villagers are saying that as we have become greedy and selfish, we have lost our tree count, our green cover, because of our selfishness and our greediness. So we have to become better moral person, better dharmic people. That's how we reflect and we defend and protect our environment. Both are connected. So even though there may not be a definite category in Sanskrit or other in our Indian texts for environment, but these embedded ideas that it's already part of our culture, it reflects in the activities such as what are shown by Bishnois and Swadhyais. This is called as embedded ecology, another kind of theoretical phrase that Vijaya Nagarajan has used in her work, and she is at UCLA in California. Dharmic ecology then can be based on these ideas, which another scholar, Dwivedi, has also come up with, these ideas which are based on Vasudeva Sarvam, omnipresence of divinity, avatar idea. Reincarnation can also happen in non-human forms, even in the turtle, fish, and half man, half human, and lion. And so idea is that not just humans do not have monopoly of divinity, other non-human forms can also be divine, as we see in other avatars of Vishnu. The idea of ahimsa, non-violence, Vasudhaiva Kutumbakam, global universal family, Sarva Bhuta Hite Rata, that the truly dharmic people are always engaged in welfare of all. And then idea of karma, action and consequence, which also connects with dharma and karma. And we have to be very mindful of our action because the consequences can be really dire towards the environment. So dharmic ecology is based on not just upyog and upabhog. Upabhog means consumption of nature. Upyog, which means sustainable usage of environmental resources, but upasana, reverence towards the environment, reverence towards nature, which can be compared with Gaia hypothesis based on the Greek mythology, reverence for life based on Christian theologian idea of Albert Schweitzer, and land ethic based on American environmentalist of Aldo Leopold. There are many, many things I can go on, but I'm just will take, if there is more interest, I'll discuss these things in question answer session. I want to be mindful of the time also. Yeah, and these are my 3 books. So what I shared today was based on the first book, parts of first book. Then the second book was based on my research in Himalayas and Punjab, where people have done similar things and they have defended and protected their environment in the Himalayas and in Punjab. And this was my latest book, which just came like 6 months back. This is based on the history of Hindu-Jain diaspora. And that completes my presentation. I can take more questions if there are any. Thank you.
Hello. Hello.
Yes, sir.
Namaste, Pankaj ji.
Namaste.
This is Vittal Podar from Bangalore.
Hello, Mr. Dr. Podar. How are you?
Yeah, fine. Thank you. Thank you for your wonderful lecture. Just I want to know, the world is witnessing a sort of a turbulence, whether you talk of our food habits, whether you talk of our lifestyles and other things. You have done a lot of research as far as vegetarianism and ecological issues are concerned. What strategy do you suggest to make the present day world an eco-friendly world also? What is your perspective or what is your idea?
Right, I touched upon that in the beginning, which was based on ideas of vegetarianism and minimalism, which are already catching up in the West already. So many people in the West are actually rejecting even dairy products and they are becoming vegans. Minimalism is another idea. Minimalism is the idea where people are reducing their consumption. They want to live in smaller homes now, and they want to cut down their consumption and possessions of different resources. So if these two ideas really catch up and become more popular, I think we can avoid these pandemics and climate change and loss of biodiversity and whatnot. These two ideas are already present in our cultures of India, Hinduism, Buddhism, Jainism, Sikhism, where ideas of renunciation are practiced for millennia. People just renounce all their wealth and all their possessions and become extremely minimalist. They become sannyasis, as you know. Vegetarianism, idea of vegetarianism is at least 2,500 years old in India. Now it is catching in the West also. So these are the two, I think, very crucial ideas that if the world accepts, we can easily avoid such disasters such as this pandemic and many others. Right?
Do you find any sort of link between our lifestyle and do you find any sort of link between our lifestyle and the global warming? It may be carbon footprints or global warming.
I already mentioned all that in the beginning, where GreenDex, GreenDex is the green index, environmental index that is measured by National Geographic for 6 years, from 2008 to 2012, for 4 years. And each time India was shown as the greenest country because of the lowest carbon footprint, based on these two ideas of very less meat consumption and very minimalistic lifestyles of Indians. 3 generations living together in a single house. More use of public transport, less consumption, less ownership of cars, less driving of cars. Even if you own a car, you will not prefer to drive that car, at least in a city like Mumbai, because sheer traffic is so huge, so you have to use public transport. So minimalistic ideas and vegetarian ideas, which are catching up in the West, in America also, are both very much derived from ancient ideas of sannyasa and shakahar and ahimsa and whatnot. Those are the ideas that I showed also in these two communities of Vishnuis and Swadhyayis. Also, those are also based on these similar ideas based on dharmic traditions of India.
Ultimately, it is a sort of a collective effort. You mean a collective effort, is it not?
Yes.
All efforts put together, ultimately you can achieve the required goal.
Right.
Thank you.
Sure.
Any other? I would like to request any other participant who has a query, or I will ask question directly.
Maybe the chat window, maybe in the some.
Yeah, that's what.
Let's see.
Okay, I could see a couple of questions there. Sir, it's from Ritika Desai. As you said that India has childlike behavior, then why peoples from other countries and regions come here for their peace of mind?
No, I did not say that India is childlike. Other Western scholars have said, like this John Stuart Mill said, that West is mature and India is childlike, or Eastern cultures are childlike. I don't agree with that, because childlike culture or civilization cannot come up with discovery of zero, golden era of economy where China and India had 70% of world's GDP until 18th century, until the British Raj came and destroyed the economy of India. That cannot be a symbol or achievements of a childlike civilization. So I don't agree with that. People come precisely to India for that reason, for peace of mind, because Indians had shown not just theoretically but practically. Most people in India, many people, even today, I think we can say most people in India, even today, will say whatever happens is Bhagwan ki marzi. So that acceptance of divinity, even in daily language, or acceptance of animals on our national highways, that kind of acceptance of all species, all beings, or divine will gives people some kind of a maturity that not everything is not in our control. We have to leave some things to God. We have to learn to live, and we have to live with other animals and other birds and even insects inside our homes. You don't just go and kill, deer just because they are causing traffic nuisance, right? We have to see, we do see elephants on national highways in Himalayan regions when I was traveling in Himalayas. So that kind of this is not childlike civilization. This is a very matured understanding, very matured perspective that accepts every being, every other perspective. Even Jews and Christians and Muslims who came to India centuries ago, they were all accepted within India, and eventually they all became Indians. So that kind of an acceptance is a characteristic of a very mature civilization, not childlike. Hope that answers your question.
Yeah, thank you, sir. The next question from Jay Bargi.
1 minute. Relating to this, do you think, Pankaj, that in the coming days we have to redefine some of the statements made by the Western scholars and philosophers as far as Indian culture is concerned?
Also. Can you tell me?
Once again, Vittal Podar. Okay. Do you think that today we have to redefine some of the statements made by the Western scholars, because a lot of research is being done in.
Did you miss my entire presentation because you're asking what I already covered? Once again, what I covered was this new theory that I and other scholars developed called Dharmic Ecology, which is based on precisely that what you just mentioned, to redefine the entire word of ecology. All such Western theories of ecology have to be redefined and defined from Indic perspective, which is based on Indic theories. Dharmic ecology is a theory that is based on Indic ideas, Indian ideas of dharma, which treats the life and the world as living by dharma. And ecology is simply a byproduct of living by dharmic principles. So that is the main, that is the whole sort of summary of my entire presentation. So of course, yes, of course, we have to redefine and reinterpret all these Western scholarly ideas. Yes. All right, any other question?
Yes, sir. It's from Jay Bargi. Is there any work on sustainable ideas structured in Indic scriptures?
Okay, that also, I guess I was
you have covered.
The entire presentation. The entire presentation was based on different ideas. So let me go to that slide. That is fine. Some things may not be so clear because I went a little bit fast also. Okay, so these are the ideas that we see as practiced by Bishnois and Swadhyayis. These ideas, Sanskrit statements, Sanskrit ideas coming from Vedic texts, Hindu texts, and that are now applied by Bishnois that are making their communities around them more sustainable. So Bishnoi people, so for example, Indian desert, the Thar desert, is the richest desert in the world in terms of flora and fauna. Kinds of animals and birds and plants that we see in Thar desert in Rajasthan, we do not see such rich biodiversity in any other desert in the world. Why? Because people like Bishnois and other communities living in that desert, based on these ideas of coming from our text, have lived very sustainably with other beings in their surroundings, right? So that is how they have reflected, they have practiced these ideas, which have made their surroundings very sustainable. So I hope that answers your question also.
Yes, sir. The next question from Dr. Subhashini Srivatsa. In a way, can I understand that preservation of cultural values, family values, religious and ethical values automatically leads to preserve our environment?
Yes, thank you. And that again, I have to go back to my first slide now, in which I titled my presentation itself as Cultures of Sustainability. equates to sustainability of cultures. So if we live by dharmic ideas of ahimsa and seeing divinity in everything and so on, we will sustain our family values. That in turn will sustain our culture. So it's a cyclical process. As we sustain these values sustain us. Right? There is a saying also, dharma rakshati rakshitaha. If we protect dharma, dharma protects us in a way. Right? So that explains. I hope that answers the question.
And then
anything else?
What does the, it's from Priyanka Pandey. What does the scientific method help test in environmental science?
Okay. Yes, that's a good question, which I did not cover. So let's take a look a little bit. Yes, scientific method. I think what, for example, this index that was measured from 2008 to 2012 by National Geographic magazine, they counted the carbon footprint of each country based on their transportation habits, food habits, lifestyles, living habits, and so on. So that was, I think, a very scientifically done survey, right? Per capita, how many cars are there in a country, right? Per capita, how much meat is consumed and how much that meat consumption causes CO2 emission, for example, per capita in a country, right? Then the kind of dwelling sizes, housing sizes, how large houses people are using in these countries, how many appliances they have in their homes, how many washing machines are consumed per capita, how many microwaves are there per capita, how many dishwashers per capita. So all of those were conducted in a very scientific, quantitative methods, right? Based on those scientific numbers, right? These numbers made them conclude that Indians are still per capita at one of the lowest carbon footprints compared to other countries of China, Brazil, Australia, Russia, United States, Canada, Mexico, and England, France, Germany, and so on. So that's, I think, example of a really scientific research that came to the same conclusion that Indians have the lowest carbon footprint. I hope that answers the question.
Yeah. The next question from Tanuj M. Masram. What a role of Indian culture in environmental conservation? I think you have covered that also. Yeah. Yes. From Shikha Srivastav. Sir, is there any relation between loss of natural aroma of plants and prevalence of viral fevers? What does your experience say?
Aroma plants and viral fevers, that's beyond my research. I'm not aware of if loss of aroma plants, does it lead to more viral fevers? I don't have the answer. I have to go back and do some more research on that. I've not done research on that topic. That's a good question.
The next question from Narendra Sharmaji. What kind of message now you have given to the people as to save the biodiversity to reduce the carbon footprint? I think, yeah, the same thing. It's nothing.
Yeah, same thing, right? So in two words, I think, again, vegetarianism and minimalism as already being practiced by a lot of Americans. And we have to just remind ourselves that these are the two core principles of dharmic ideas that we have to go back and stick to these two powerful ideas, right? These are all, vegetarianism is a prerequisite to do yoga, for example. Yoga Sutra starts with yama and niyama, yam and niyam. Yam, first principle is ahimsa. Ahimsa, first major way we can practice ahimsa is by not killing other beings for our own taste or our own greed or our own selfish needs. Right? So yeah, all of that.
Yeah, the next question from Dr. Mahavir Jha. Sir, according to you, is there any other culture of the world very helpful to protect or balance ecology other than Indian culture?
Yes, okay, so that's a great question also. Like I already mentioned, now many Americans are turning towards vegetarianism and minimalism. So of course, we already see some small glimpses of great environmental respect by white Americans also. Similarly, there are many Buddhist cultures in China, Thailand, Tibet, for example, Tibet especially, where I met a Buddhist monk here in Dallas, who is more living by even stricter life than my life, I guess, because I do take dairy products. But that Buddhist monk, based on Tibetan Buddhism, will not even take dairy products. That's a great example coming from Tibetan traditions of Buddhism, where harming other beings, even for dairy, is considered bad. So yes, Buddhist cultures in Tibet. And then when I went to Kuala Lumpur, actually Malaysia, many years ago, I have seen people in Malaysia, Buddhist people in Malaysia, who will not take any meat products. So vegetarianism based on Buddhism in Malaysia and Thailand and Tibet. So yes, there are such examples. Then there are Quakers within Christianity who also are 100% against any kind of violence. But their numbers are very, very almost nil now. But very small community of Quakers in Christianity also practices extreme non-violence. There are such examples that I am aware of. There must be many more.
Yeah, as you told correctly, I would like to add a point there. Yeah, Buddhism, as you told, because Dalai Lama entered India through Arunachal and all. So Arunachal, no, there are the area where they don't even kill even they don't rear even the chickens and other things. They have completely non-violence, as you correctly told. Buddhism.
Yes.
The next question from Mahima Jain. Sir, I want to know what is your view or philosophy about having vegetarian or non-vegetarian if we relate it with sustainable development?
Yeah, I think already covered. Yeah, that's good.
Do you think if everyone become vegetarian, so there will be enough food for whole population at country level or world level?
Okay, that's a that's a good question. Okay, so let's discuss a little bit of that. Okay, anybody, please Google for a documentary film called Cowspiracy. Just as the word conspiracy, replace N with W, Cowspiracy. Also look at the documentary called Food Inc. and another documentary called, okay, let's just stick to these other many others, but Cowspiracy and Food Inc., where we see that raising animal farming is perhaps the #1 reason for global hunger, global food problems, global water scarcity, global climate change, greenhouse gas emissions, many other problems are all rooted in animal farming, because water consumption or grain consumption by animals, which are eventually consumed by humans, mostly in European and North American countries, that is the biggest reason for global world hunger. So if we stop this animal farming, all that grains that is to be fed to animals can be, that land can be used to grow food for humans. And we don't have to cut millions of hectares of forests. Those forests are replaced by farms, and those farms raise food for animals, and those animals are consumed by humans. Again, so huge problems because of animal farming. So yes, world hunger will be solved, though that problem will be solved immediately if we replace animal farming with farming for food for humans. Thank you. That was a good question.
Yeah, so here I would like to add, I correctly agree with Pankaj sir, that many parts of Orissa, Bengal and Andhra Pradesh, they have converted their agricultural land into fisheries and your prawns and all. Now, when there is a scarcity of rice, they are not going back, because without rice or wheat, you can't survive. But without fishes and animal, you can, definitely. People don't understand that. And for short-term goal, they are doing that way. So I think we have to think seriously about this.
Yeah, that was a good point. I was speaking mostly from North American perspective, because here meat is consumed 3 times a day. Breakfast, lunch, dinner, 100% meat. Not 100, probably 90% meat is the main staple diet in North America and Europe. I was speaking more from, but thanks for adding the Indian perspective.
I'd like to add here with Priyanka Reddy, in what way is better protection of environment a possible result of successful development?
I didn't get the question. It's not clear.
In what way is the better protection of the environment a possible result of successful sustainable development?
Okay. Sustainable development by definition means that we are developing economically, but at the same time sustaining our environment also at the same time. So if we go back 200 years from now, China and India were extremely developed economically and probably ecologically also until 18th century. And in last 200 years, in last 2 centuries, in the name of rapid economic development or exploitation, we sacrificed our environmental resources for on the altar of so-called development. So British Raj, for example, they constructed these industries in England, which were based the textile industries, right? So that were based on massive exploitation of our farming lands, and our probably forests were replaced by farms of cotton and whatnot. So this and many other examples can be added to this. A train network that was constructed across India, and all kinds of exploitation that happened in the last 2 centuries. And sadly, unfortunately, after independence, our governments continued the similar ideas in many regions. So that continued this exploitation, destruction of our environment. And now we have to really stop that and think of the environment also. And our economy and ecology both have to be taken care of at the same time. And environmental protection can in fact generate new jobs, new employment opportunities also. For example, green industries and so on. I think that can be very sustainable, at the same time economically beneficial also. We all have to think more carefully, and we have to do this now, otherwise it will be too late.
Yes, sir. That's so nice. So the next question from Dr. Subhashini Srivatsa: why we have not yet started environmental taxes like income tax, annual tax for not growing and maintaining trees? Can this help in constitution? Why there is no frequent raids and checks regarding that?
Yeah, that's a good point. Also, in America now there is some debate, discussion going on, extremely bitter debate actually, where some Democratic lawmakers, so MPs, in India we call MPs, Member of Parliament, here we call them lawmakers. So some lawmakers such as AOC in short, and others, Bernie Sanders and Senator, have now they want to promote what they call as Green New Deal, in which they want to completely stop fossil fuel and impose these new taxes, green tax also, to punish the industries that are causing environmental damage. But of course, Republicans are completely opposed to that. So there's a huge debate going on, and it'll be interesting what they decide. But at least the discussion has started, at least in America. In India, probably there are already a lot of checks and balances. Actually, there's a lot of environmental testing that goes on for many industries. Unfortunately, many times laws are not enforced properly in India, and people get away with all kinds of loopholes that have to be stopped. But yes, we do have to definitely impose checks and balances, especially clean our rivers and other resources. Yes.
Right. So here the question, it's more than a statement, I could say. We have always been watching the interdependence of nature and the religion of dharma. But today, in the era of consumerism and profit, the nature of dharma has changed and is not messing with itself.
Yes, that's a statement. So let's
yeah.
go to next.
Okay, so I would like to ask Ankit Mishra. He has raised his hand. So if you can unmute yourself and ask question. Ankit Mishra.
That's okay. You can go to next. How much time we have?
Sandeep Khajale, you want to ask any question? You have raised hand. Please unmute yourself and ask a question. No, I don't think so.
Yeah. Anything else?
Yeah, so I would really thank you, Pankaj, for such a wonderful talk and making us going back to our roots to understand that during the civilization, we have started with cultivating or taking the grains and the harvesting and all. So I think this is how we have to think instead of making profits and all. And in this, I would like to quote small, that Ratan Tata, the greatest industrialist of India, has told, this year, we are not thinking of anything like profit or gains. In fact, it is the era of survival. And Darwin's law, survival of the fittest. So we should think only of surviving, emphasizing on humanity, compassionate, and empathy. I think these three, if we nurture, I think we can go according to you.
खाना पीना खा सकते हैं, दिक्कत नहीं है, मोबाइल किसी को नहीं दे सकते बस।
So I would like to now thank Pankaj Jain ji on behalf of Seshadipram Group of Institutions, Karnataka Science and Technology Academy, MentorX Global, Indian Institute of Science Alumni Association, North Bangalore Science Forum, Research Foundation of India for accepting our invitation and enlightening all the delegates across India, world. There were around participants from 16 countries and more than 1,600 participants. They were viewing in YouTube and Facebook. So social medias they were viewing. So thank you, sir. I wholeheartedly thank you once again. And once the lockdown gets over and sometime the environment is good, I think we can meet personally also once you come to India or we go abroad. Thank you, sir. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. It was nice. Yeah.
Thank you. Bye, sir. Thank you.